many times, you'll have a leader that talks about a problem employee, but they've never mentioned those behaviors ever. And then all of a sudden they want to fire them. And it's like, well, what have you done to work with this individual? Well, I haven't. I'm just tired of it. Well, that's when we need to be able to have that safe environment at the very beginning, day one on the job. Hey, this is something that I've seen you do. And let me kind of talk to you a little bit about how we do things here. And I'd like to learn from you how, what you were thinking while you were doing that. So we can really meet in the middle somewhere here.
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, and this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. Please follow, rate, and review Good Morning HR on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at goodmorninghr.com. My definition of a leader is someone who organizes and incentivizes others to achieve shared goals. But that'd be a lot easier if the people we lead came fully equipped to meet every challenge. But they don't. And how we as leaders respond to situations when someone isn't quite there yet has a giant impact on employee engagement and organizational success. But just like our team members, sometimes we as leaders aren't quite there yet. And that is where today's guest comes in. Kristine Conway is a certified coach who transforms leaders who fix into leaders who facilitate the fix. She has over 20 years of excellence in improving experiences through the leverage of people development in organizations of all sizes and across industries. Welcome to Good Morning HR, Kristine.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
So we're of the same generation, so I can say this. You have undoubtedly worked with hundreds of leaders over your career. What do you think most leaders don't understand about coaching their team members?
Oh, there are so many misconceptions. I think the first one would be that it takes too much time. And that's the first pushback that I get, is that I don't have time to coach. I need to get things done. And it's easier for me to do it myself or tell somebody what to do than it is for me to coach them through something.
Yeah, and how many of us as leaders, that's just our only job. The only thing we have to do today is lead people. But no, we don't have to read emails. We don't have to get that report done. We don't have to do all those things. If all we have to do is just lead people all day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that just didn't happen. And so I'm guilty of it. In fact, every year, this is during our annual planning, we all go around and say, one thing on my senior team, everybody, one thing somebody's done really great and something we'd like them to, stop doing or do differently in the coming year. And then, there's usually a consensus around that. And mine this year was spend more time developing my senior team on a one-on-one basis. And I thought I was good at. I thought I was doing a good job. We have one-to-ones every week, and all of that. But they felt like I was getting too in the weeds and not spending enough time on the bigger picture stuff working with them. And so I can definitely see how a leader would say, "Oh, it's going to take too much time," because it is, right?
Yeah,
it's going to take time,
absolutely.
Maybe not too much. So,
Right.
What would you say to that leader who says, "Oh, it's going to take too much time"?
I would say, yeah, it's going to take more time than it does now initially. You're going to pay it, at the front end of it. It's front loaded. However, if you spend an hour with someone coaching them through how to do a certain task or how to handle a certain situation, that hour is going to pay off, because that individual is not going to keep coming back to you over and over again to have you fix things. And so it's definitely an investment, but it's not a quick fix. And, that's what we want. We want quick fixes. And if I can do it myself, that's a quick fix. Well, that's great. But then you don't have time to do the work that you're supposed to do.
So if I'm a leader who is definitely in fixed mode, who's just, okay, here, give it to me, let me have it. Or, yeah, send me that. I say that too much. I can tell. I just said that, and I was like, oh wow, I probably said that twice today.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm that guy, what's the first thing I need to reconsider as far as to improve the situation?
Yeah, well, I would suggest that you think bigger picture. Often we're wanting to address something that's right in front of us, right? So you someone's got a problem, you're like, send it to me, let me take care of it. But bigger picture, we have to take a step back from being the fixer and the solution provider by letting the individual use that as something to develop with. And that's where we start developing teams. That's where we start developing talent to where individuals don't come to us for that type of thing any longer because they're using it to learn from. If we fixed it all the time, there'd be nothing for them to learn. And we don't learn from being told how to do something. We don't learn by really watching someone else do it. We learn by putting our hands in it and doing it and having the experience.
So what does that look like? I mean, if I think what you're saying is like walk alongside that person while they do it.
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
my
And
God,
just,
that will take forever. Yeah.
well, sometimes you have to think about what questions could you ask that individual in order to spark thought. And that is important. Being able to spark thought in the individual so that they can think of different ways, better ways to do things, which they actually come up with better solutions than we could give them.
So questions like, "Were you just born dumb?" Or what kind of questions? What kind of questions would you ask to help spark thought?
Yeah, yeah, not that one.
Okay.
So the question that I would ask would be something like, "Well, what have you tried already?" Get them to talk about it.
Okay.
Sometimes they've tried 1,000 things and they're frustrated, or sometimes they haven't tried anything and they're coming directly to you because you've always provided them with the solution. So why should I try?
So you've trained them. So you've trained them to do
Oh,
that, right? Yeah.
oh, Mike, that is such a wonderful thing because yes, we train everyone in our world how they are reacting to us. We've trained them from day one. So asking them questions that are open ended, that do not have an easy yes no, questions that are thought provoking, that make people think. So whenever you ask a question and you see someone go, you can see the kind of the wheels turning, at that point that you've asked them a question that just sparked thought.
Okay. So what have you tried before? Um, why did you do it this way? Uh,
Yeah,
well,
tell me how,
what were you
tell me,
thinking? Or what the hell were
yeah.
you thinking? See, I go right back to it every time.
That is an open-ended question, but that's not
Yeah.
the kind of
Not,
open-ended question we want to use. So, what have you tried before? And tell me tell me what's gone on from this point. What's important about this situation? What are you trying to accomplish? Things like that. I tend to coach leaders not to ask the question why, because why sometimes trips us up and makes us feel a little defensive. And so, when you're in a situation with an employee or any other human, you want to make them feel safe so that they can tell you, well, I tried this before and it blew up in my face. And I didn't really want to tell you that. But if you've made me feel safe, then I can say, yeah, Mike, I tried that and I got 4 customer complaints when I did that,
hmm,
you know?
there you go.
And then when you say, well, tell me about that. And then, it's not a punishment. It's more of creating dialogue.
So to ask the right questions, does a leader need to change how they're thinking about the person that they're coaching?
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple of fundamentals that I use when I teach leaders how to tweak their leadership style to more of a coach like style. And one of them is that you have to believe in your heart of hearts that the person across from you or on the video from you or on the other side of the phone, you have to fully believe that they're capable of doing it and they're capable of improvement. If you don't believe that, it's going to come out. It's going to come out in your tones. It's going to come out in the types of questions that you ask. It's going to come out in the patience that you do or do not have with that individual, for sure. And, another kind of belief that I ask leaders to take on when they're doing this is that they have to understand that they don't own the fix. And that freaks leaders out because that's why I'm in the position I am in. I fix things. Well, as a leader, it's more important for you to facilitate the fix by helping others learn how to fix because you're only one person. And this really does make the ripple effect go even further. And it makes you more valuable. But that is something that a lot of leaders they're very resistant because when it comes down to the nitty gritty, I'm the one responsible. Yeah, you are. And so how can you facilitate the fixes in a way that generates more innovation, that generates more development, that gets people engaged in their jobs? I mean, how many times do you like being told what to do, Mike?
Oh, yeah, I'm not very good at that. No.
No, most of us aren't. Most of us aren't because, that puts us at an uneven field. And when we're coaching or leading like a coach, we're human to human, which is a really safe place. And, you're not above me and I'm not above you. We're together and we're working through this. We're partnering together.
So it's more of a focus on an outcome, that shared goal. Here's how do we get where we need to go,
Absolutely.
without me
Absolutely.
as the leader becoming the bottleneck. Because I think that's definitely something I've struggled with. Is I'll say, oh, well, here, give it to me, or shoot it to me, or let me look at that, and then I get a mile long list of to dos
Yeah,
that people may wait longer than they need
absolutely.
to. Sure.
And
Okay.
then
Whereas,
you're not able to do the higher strategy stuff.
right. Oh yeah, right. And then in those cases the leader just needs to get out of the way, make sure we're on the same page, talk
Yeah,
through the issues, and then just get the heck out of the way.
absolutely. And that's tough because we like to have control.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and especially in the entrepreneurial world like I'm in, I mean, this is my baby. I came up with the concept. I mean, there are a lot of things that, people in our office, they say that's the imperative way, but what that really means, that's the Coffey way. Because that's, it's my vision they're executing still 23 years later. And I mean, I've got amazing people, but it's still the gospel according to Coffey at the end of the day, and that they're executing against. So, but I need to figure out often, I guess, better about how to get out of their way. What are some things that a leader can do to get out of the way? I what kind of what do I need a mantra to myself, or do I need to a rubber band where I pop on my wrist every time I intervene on something? Or what are some what do you see leaders successfully doing to make that transition?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, Mike, is really becoming more self-aware. Finding out, I mean, just like the roundtable that you had where your folks had told you, that they want more development, want more conscious effort towards them, and really seeking out that feedback constantly and in different ways. If you're asking for the same activity to happen over and over again, you're having to ask for that. It's probably not the executioner of the task. It might be the asker of the task, and find those things out. Of course, there's surveys all over the place that are assessments that you can take to kind of help you give yourself some insight. And that's what if you work on yourself first, then you're able to really be different with your employees and get better results. The way that I work with leaders is that we first talk about how do we become more present. Are you in the room with me? Or are you physically here and your mind is 2 blocks down? How do you do that? And how do you get present and how do you focus and really working on that? Because that is really the foundational piece of being able to lead in a coach like way is you've got to get out of your own way before you can get out of their way and becoming more present, more mindful. We work a lot on emotional intelligence. How do we use emotions as data? Well, we have to first of all recognize them, and we have to be present in order to recognize them. And all of that starts with becoming self-aware. That's really the heart of becoming better in whatever you do.
And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, premium background checks with fast and friendly service. 23 years ago, I founded Imperative to help risk-averse companies make well-informed decisions about the people they involve in their business. Often that involves giving employers thorough and easy to understand background checks on prospective employees. But sometimes it means helping families make well-informed decisions when hiring nannies or other caregivers. Outside of employment, we help services firms with their client acceptance and know your customer requirements. And we help investors research the principles in firms in which they are considering making private equity placements. Basically, if people are involved, there's risk involved. We help companies identify and mitigate that risk. You can learn more about Imperative at imperativeinfo.com. And if you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 53 and enter the keyword Conway. That's Conway. And now back to my conversation with Kristine Conway. It's interesting that you talk about the emotional intelligence thing because that's always been, I've read the HBR articles and some Daniel Goleman and stuff, but I was at lunch with someone not long ago and they said something that struck me wrong, but I was going to let it pass, and he stopped and said, "Hey, that seemed to make hit a chord with you. What were you thinking right then?"
Yes.
And he just called me on the carpet, and I was like, "Oh well." And then and it led to a much deeper conversation than I was planning on having with this guy. But I thought it was a great question, and it showed that he was paying attention.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really, really interesting question, and it kind of drove home for me. That's what emotional intelligence. That's all this stuff we've talked about. That ability to pick up somebody else's responses, and take that as stimuli to understand what's going on with them.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's huge. And then, picking up your own stimuli as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that, when you're talking with someone, how you are or are not present. What are the words that they're saying that might be triggering you to not listen, and understanding that so that you can be present and show up 100%, regardless of what the topic is, regardless of what triggers may be present.
Yeah, and I think that's true for fixers especially. You start telling me the problem. I've got the answer already, right? So let's just get through your talking part. Okay, blah 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 blah. Okay, here's what you need to do.
Exactly.
And in my head's already 3-4 steps. And people who are I'm high intuition, and so I know what the answer is before I often know why that's the answer. And so to step back as a leader and say, okay, I see where this is going. Let me ask the question so that this person gets to the right place without me having to draw, carry them there. And then, like you said, they've learned it, right? And
Absolutely.
wow,
And
okay.
sometimes as a leader, I mean, we may be very intuitive and especially with, with the same types of situations, right? They come in different flavors. They may look a little different, but at the root, they're very similar. And that's what I help leaders do is that, I kind of envision a funnel, right? And your conversation starts at the very top of the funnel and it kind of goes around and you're kind of finding out what it is that they're talking to you about. Well, there's a couple of times that you go, oh, I know exactly. But if you wait and you probe and you ask questions and you listen, it may be that same thing that you were thinking, but it may not have been. And when you get to the heart of it, it then allows that other individual to have said what they needed to say to process. You're finding out more information because when we know the solution before they've gotten it all out, we've cut off dialogue and we've lost a lot of data there. And in order for us to really build impactful relationships with one another, we've got to have data and we've got to use it intelligently.
If I get it, okay, so I want to be emotionally intelligent, and I want to be self aware, and hear what's going on inside and how I'm responding. Do you have a preferred assessment that you like? I've had some experience with some of them, and I find them pretty liberating. But do you have one that you really like, or?
I do actually. I use Learning in Actions emotional intelligence assessment, which it's one that I use with my one-on-one clients, and it goes through actual videos of situations, and you have to react not how you think you should, but really how you feel inside. And it is very, very insightful, and it helps you understand yourself on a level that you go, oh my goodness. And it's really, probably it takes you about 45 minutes to take, but it gets you at the core, and it's how you're wired, so that you can know how to navigate knowing your wiring.
So that's the Learning in Actions emotional intelligence.
Yes, it's Learning in
Okay.
Action emotional intelligence assessment.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
So there are these situations we've talked about so far where we're showing someone how to do something or helping somebody solve a problem. But there are those other situations where it's not, how do I get tab A into slot A, but it's more about a behavioral change. This is what we need you to do to change, or this is, this is the behavior we value in the organization. This is how to get things done here. And you're not living that. You're not aligned with our values. How do you have that conversation as a leader?
Yeah, so it's really helping. One of the competencies that we work with in teaching leaders how to coach is creating awareness and helping that individual become aware of how they're impacting others, is the first step. Because if I'm not aware, because the other mindset or fundamental is that you can't force coaching on anyone, because coaching is a partnership.
It's like
And
Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Yeah.
there
Okay.
you
Yeah.
go. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when someone doesn't see a need for change, you can talk all day long and it's not going to be impactful. They have to see the need. So being able to create that awareness with them, and that's why so many of the organizations do like 360 feedback. The best way though, the very best way is direct communication with individuals in the moment all the time. Many times, you'll have a leader that talks about a problem employee, but they've never mentioned those behaviors ever. And then all of a sudden they want to fire them. And it's like, well, what have you done to work with this individual? Well, I haven't. I'm just tired of it. Well, that's when we need to be able to have that safe environment at the very beginning, day one on the job. Hey, this is something that I've seen you do, and let me kind of talk to you a little bit about how we do things here, and I'd like to learn from you how what you were thinking while you were doing that, so we can really meet in the middle somewhere here. So awareness, and in the moment feedback. is a big one. But if you haven't done that, and you've got, say you inherited someone and their behaviors are just, not aligning, remember, safe environment, partnering. I'm not the boss of you, even though I am, but I'm not, we're human, right?
We're having a conversation.
We're having a conversation. And the heart of this conversation is so that I can get a better understanding so that I can help you be successful here.
Okay.
And when you start off a conversation like that, that does help de-escalate. It helps me feel safe. It makes me know that you care enough about this situation for me to have a conversation with you. And it's about my success. It's not about your ego. It's not about you, um, getting me in trouble. It's about the success. And then you're able to talk about the things, as long as you're not, condemning the individual. You're talking about the behavior. Be curious. Sometimes we forget to be curious. We think we know all. But there's 1,000 things that could be causing something that you have no idea about. And that's important to remember.
And earlier you talked about fully believing the person can do what you need them to do.
Yeah.
And I would guess that goes beyond just a task. They have assuming they have the ability. Okay, I'm not gonna waste otherwise you're wasting your time. If I don't believe this person's gonna change their behavior, then why are we even bothering having the conversation other than documentation, so that down the road when we have to, let them go, we've got documentation, which is probably the worst reason to do any of this.
Absolutely.
But if I need to go into the conversation with faith that this person, I guess it's going in with good faith, really, right? That we're going to have an honest conversation here. I'm the knucklehead who hired this person. So if it's, if this doesn't work out, it's on me. And that's one thing I've had a lot of conversation I've had with employers over the years, many times, or especially hiring managers, is this is not a problem with this employee. This is a problem with you. You put the square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
And now you're hammering on it to make it fit.
Absolutely.
And so we have to have that idea that they can be successful here. And that goes back to that self-awareness of me as the leader, though, to say, okay, what presuppositions am I walking into this conversation with?
Absolutely. And, there's going to be times when the individual is not capable. And then the solution isn't coaching, because coaching helps with capabilities and helps facilitate that out. At that point, you transition to training, because there's a skill gap there. There's not an opportunity to pull out that potential. They need to be poured into, and then that is a training opportunity at that point.
Interesting. Okay. What about those situations where I'm the team member and I need to coach up? I need to help my leader. My team seems to have no problem with it, but talk about those situations where when is that feasible, and how do you do that without breaking eggs?
Yeah, so it comes back down to that safe environment again. What kind of culture do you have? Is it okay to have that kind of conversation? How have you made it clear that it's okay to have that conversation? How have you made it clear that it's not okay to have that conversation? Those are things that I would have you look for. And then, making sure that, again, when you're coaching, it's all about respect, and it's all about, an even playing field, and bringing up and staying curious. And, if me as a direct report of yours, I might ask you a few questions. So, Mike, how did you think that meeting went? Kind of get your input on that. And then, before the meeting, you said that you were going to be able to give me some space in that meeting to talk about my expertise. And we left that meeting and all they knew was my name. So I haven't shamed you. I haven't told you that you're a terrible person and you're a horrible boss and you hate me. I have told you the facts. and I stuck to the facts, and I didn't taint that with any type of, attitude or presumptions there.
Well, so let's talk about that because you just the facts. But there seems to be in pop psychology and pop workplace psychology a lot of focus on feelings, and I ain't got no room for feelings.
I
But
felt
uh,
like, yeah,
yeah. What's the role of expressing things that way? You made me
yeah,
feel this way.
yeah. That to me is it's important in certain situations. If your comeback to that was, well, that's just tough. That's where we went. Then it may be important for me to share with you. Well, I felt like I could trust you that we were going to do this thing, and now I'm feeling like I can't. And that's going to give you data. But feelings, it's not 100% all the time, but it is data that when it's important, it's good data. But it's not one of those things that you lather everything up with every day, because then that's enough.
Oh yeah. It gets real tiring real quick. And I love people. I mean, I'm a people. They give
Yeah,
me energy, but there's a point where you just got to get the job done. I don't care what you feel like, and I've been married 25 years, so I know how to emote and feel things when I'm supposed to, but there's a point where I just got to get the job done, right? And
yeah,
and
yeah.
we're well, so let's say we have that coaching session. What's the follow up to that? I mean, do we do that and then let it go and trust that person to get it, that they're going to do it right? Or do we need, or do we undermine ourselves are we taking control of it again if we circle back? What's the next step?
So one of the things I really like to empower my leaders with is having them empower their coachee to follow up. So when you finish a discussion, we finish up with some strategy and next steps. So what are we going to do, or what are you going to do? How's it going to look like? What are your dates? How do I know it's going to be done? How do you know it's going to be successful? We're talking about all of that, and then you agree. How is that next follow up going to look like? Is it going to be the next meeting that you're going to report back? It's all in that agreement piece on that. I don't recommend coming back and following and following and following up, because that becomes like micromanagement. However, it's going to vary based on the level of employee that you're dealing with, right? It's going to vary on a number of things. And if your job has become the follow up master, then the coaching is probably not going as effectively as it should. Or there's a way that the interactions really aren't setting in, and it could be one or both, coachee or coach or the coach.
So set clear expectations about deliverables or next steps at the end of the coaching or during the coaching session, so that it's real clear when we leave, we know what's going to happen. And that's interesting because I recently did an investigation for a large employer and in a department, and the manager, there wasn't anything, as it turned out, that I thought was illegal in in how the manager was treating people, but uh, the manager definitely managed by playing gotcha. Well, okay, would mention something, hey, this needs to get done, then with no expectation as to when or setting deadlines or anything. And then, a week, 10 days later, just walk up to somebody's desk or their office and say, hey, where's this project at? Okay, I didn't, we didn't know where this was in the priority
Yeah,
list and all of that. And so I can definitely see where that would, in this organization, it caused a lot of chaos,
yeah,
and senior leadership, I think, understood it by the time we were done, but that was a real problem. So we need to set, if we're going to do this coaching and spend all this time doing the coaching session and walking somebody through that process, we need to set, okay, here's what it's going to look like going forward. Here's when I'll follow up. And it may be different for different circumstances.
yeah. And Mike, one of the things that about learning how to coach and taking on a leader coach mindset is that you can use these skills outside of a session, right? This is, I mean, imagine if you left every single meeting or every single conversation with clear expectations. How how much
Yeah,
better would your life be?
that would be. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You
And
know, and if you
I
treated
didn't
every
record them though, so because that's yeah, I don't. I may not remember in 2 days what we agreed to. So
well, there we go. And so that's another issue. But but if you treated everyone like a partner and
hmm
you stayed curious and you didn't assume that you knew what they were going to say or you knew what they were going to do and you stayed in the moment and you were present, that's like relationship enhancing. And at the end of the day, we do just need to get the job done, but the jobs are going to get done at a much higher quality when people are communicating on that type of level.
great. Well, Kristine, that's all the time we have. But thank you so much for joining me,
Thank you for having me. I do appreciate it.
and thank you for listening. You can find previous episodes, show notes, and contact info for our guests at goodmorninghr.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Rob Upchurch is our technical producer, and I'm Mike Coffey. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.